Re okay, recording, and we're just one person coming into from the waiting room. All right, so we can begin. All right, so thank you everybody for coming. We're going to start our presentation. Let me just share the screen. All right, if everybody's ready, we can begin. All right, so welcome everybody to our talk on making my way to college through summer programs. My name is Daniel Scarnati, and I am the Education USA advisor for Monterrey. And our special guest for today is Sarah Bembenek-Saborio from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And she will be giving this talk right after I give you a brief introduction on what Education USA is and what we do. So, one more thing, please, if you have any questions, write them down in the chat box, and we'll have a few minutes at the end of this presentation to answer all of your questions, okay? So you can ask questions about Education USA for me, or about the rest of the chat for Sarah. So let's begin with what is Education USA. So Education USA is a global network of advising centers. We are part of the U.S. State Department, of the U.S. government, the U.S. State Department's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. We have 23 advising centers, Education USA advising centers around Mexico. And what we do is we give free access to introductory information on studying in the United States. Our target market is students, higher education institutions, governments, and NGOs. What do we do? All right, so our services are divided into three parts. We have in-center informative sessions. Everything we do in-center is what we do, obviously physically in our center. Our center is in Biblioteca Benjamin Franklin de Monterrey, which is at Relaciones Culturales Centro in Monterrey as well. So everything we do there is called in-center. We give informative sessions, we give one-on-one sessions, we give workshops, and we have official resources and study guides for studying in the United States. Outreach, that's the second category. Outreach is when I go out of my center and I visit, for example, local schools and fairs, and I participate in workshops outside my center. And finally, virtual, which is what we're doing right now, and what we've been doing throughout the pandemic. So one-on-one sessions, webinars, fairs, and seminars. We are just starting to have in-person sessions, a little bit of in-center and outreach, and hopefully soon we'll be back to 100% in person. But even though we'll be in person, we also have the virtual component as well. So we are frequently asked questions we get at Education USA. First one is, does Education USA grant scholarships? That's kind of a yes and a no question. So we don't give scholarships for studying in the United States, but we do have one scholarship called Opportunity Funds, which is a scholarship which covers all the costs, or most of the costs, of the admissions process. So it'll cover test prep. It'll cover the cost of your exams, your TOEFL or your English exam, or your admissions exam. If you're going to present the SAT or the GRE or whatever, it'll cover that. It'll cover plane tickets. It'll cover cost of a visa. It covers most of these costs that are part of the admissions process. So if you're interested in that, we will be opening that calling. Usually it opens up in December and it closes down in February. So just make sure to follow us on social media so you get the news when we're open. Do you provide support for exchange programs? Usually that's something you will if you want to have maybe a year exchange or some extra exchange as part of your current program here in Mexico. You will have to talk to your university to see if they have an exchange program, some sort of an alliance with another university, so you can make that exchange easier. If you need any help, we might be able to help you with a few things, but we do not go deeply into exchange programs. Do we offer English language courses? No, we don't. But at least here in Monterrey, our host institution does. And we can also, if you're interested in studying in the United States, English in the United States, we can also help you out with that. Do you have partnerships or agreements with specific U.S. colleges and universities? No, we don't. We do not have partnerships with specific U.S. colleges and universities. We have partnerships with all of the accredited universities. So it's not a partnership per se. We serve all of them, okay? And basically, we divide our the process, the admissions process, we divide it into 5 steps. So first step is research your options. This is where you start searching for universities that are going to be your best fit, the ones that you are going to apply to. Number 2 is finance your studies. This works almost hand in hand with research your options. This is basically making a budget and just researching how much money you can afford to invest, and how much, if you're going to need any other financial aid, that's where you're going to start looking at it. Number 3 is complete your application. So this is where you begin with study for your exams, with writing your essays, with asking for letters of recommendation, etc., etc., etc. This is the whole application process. Step number 4 is apply for your visa, which is pretty clear. It's a student visa. And number 5, prepare for your departure. This is where we give pre-departure orientations with all sorts of useful information for you right before your departure. So we can help you out in each and every one of these steps, and we will for free for you. And we're very glad to see people depart to the United States. It's very fulfilling, and I hope I can see most of you who are here as well to be going to the United States to study. Okay, so I now present again Sarah Bembenik Saborium, sorry. She's the International Program Coordinator for University of Wisconsin-Madison. Thank you, Sarah, and I leave it to you.
Great. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for joining Daniel and myself for what I hope is a really useful little period of your time to learn a little bit about the United States and study in the United States, and specifically high school study abroad programs that can help you to get your way into, kind of give you a taste of life in the United States as a college student. So we can go ahead and advance to the next slide. And I want to start by asking you guys a question, and please feel free to put anything in the chat that you'd like. It helps me to learn a little bit about you and what your interests are. So I want to know first, what do you think you want to be doing 10 years from now? So take a minute and throw in the chat what your goal is. In 10 years from now, where will you be? What will you be doing? Maybe you'll still be in school. Maybe you'll have a job. What do you think that'll be? And as you're typing, I want to just mention that the reason I ask you this is because if you are in fact a high school student right now, right, what we think we want to do today can very possibly change in a year or 2 or 3 years from now. And I think that it's important to know that and know that some of the things we're going to talk about today can help you to kind of think about what your long-term plan is. So we'll go ahead and advance. And if you want to throw ideas in the chat, feel free. So let's take a look at the next slide. So in the next short while, I want to talk to you about a couple things. The first is talk to you a little bit about US university admissions. So what do universities in the United States look for when they are looking at people who apply to their schools? Then I want to look specifically at study abroad as a high school student. Then I want to talk about Madison and specifically where I'm from, and the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and then talk about those programs I mentioned earlier, which are those high school study abroad programs. And I see here Tadia mentioned interest in getting starting their own business, which is awesome, right? And a lot of careers can feed into that. So that's a great, thank you for sharing that information. All right, go ahead and let's take a look at the next slide. So I want to take a look and think about why would you, if you're a high school student, consider studying abroad? And let's take a look at some of the thoughts behind this. So in the United States, okay, when you apply to a university or higher education, it is not just your test score or your grades, your GPA, that is the only thing that the school considers. Okay, and this is really important, and I know it's different from Mexico. I've actually visited Mexico a couple times to visit schools and students, and I understand that grades are very, very important and test scores are very important. And in the United States, they're also important, but we have what we call a holistic approach. What that means is that we look at you as like a whole person, not just your test scores or not just your grades. So what does this mean? We look at, do you have any sorts of leadership skills? What I mean is, was there a student government at your school and maybe you were in it? Or maybe outside of school, there was some activity that you participated in that shows that you are a leader, okay? Were you involved in your community? Did you do some sort of volunteer work, or did you get involved in, I don't know, some sort of recreational group or some sort of activist group? Did you do anything particularly notable, or were you very good in arts or sports or something else, music, anything that's not kind of school related? Okay, if you just play soccer for fun on the weekends, that's probably not what we're looking for. But if you were on a competitive team, or if you play the violin amazingly and you competed or you performed, that's something that's unique about you. Do you have any sort of diverse personal experiences? So maybe you live in a family that's moved a lot and you've had to live in different countries or different cultures, or maybe you've spoken multiple languages, or maybe you had a study abroad experience. These are things that make you unique and show that you are more than just a student who likes to study, but that you like to be in your community and you like to learn and you like to be involved with other people. So, and then last, do you have potential to contribute positively to the community? So when you go study at a university, and I imagine it's the same in Mexico as well, that they want to make sure you're someone who will contribute to your, your school community, or maybe even the bigger community. And so this is something also, if you have work outside in the community in some way, that's really positive on a college application in the United States. Let's take a look at what comes next. So when you guys are thinking about going abroad, and maybe in a high school study abroad program, it's important to know there are lots of choices. Okay, so there's not just one kind of standard program, right? Some programs are commuter and some are residential. What that means is if you were already living in the United States, maybe at like a boarding school, you could go to the program every day and then come back to your school. Okay, some are residential, which means that you actually live on campus. And the ones I'm going to talk about today, some of them are residential. There's also domestic versus international programs. So what this means is that a domestic program is maybe they're only open to international students, I'm sorry, domestic students, or maybe it's open to domestic students primarily, mostly, and then there are a small group of international students. Now, an international program means it's only international students. So you won't have students from the United States, but you'll have students from Mexico and Colombia and, you know, Korea and Japan and all these different places, right? And so they're just kind of two different offerings. There's virtual, right, on the computer and in-person programs. And then there's programs that are college preparatory, which means they help you to get ready for college. And there are some that are just very specific themes. What I mean by that is, for example, at UW-Madison, we have a program for high school students that's only focused on music. So it doesn't matter if you're a domestic student or an international student. All that matters is that you love music. And then you would participate in, for example, our summer music clinic. So that's what I mean when I say there are some that have specific themes and some that might be just preparing you for college. So let's move on. So I want to talk now about the benefits of an in-person study abroad program, okay? We just looked at, you know, the different kinds of study abroad. Now let's talk about the benefits. So let's move on to the next slide. And we'll look at why it might be great as a high school student to participate in an in-person program. So first of all, of course, you get to go live somewhere else, right? You get to live in another country and see a different part of the world. You also get to gain a global perspective. Now, why is that important? I think we all saw very quickly and for a very long time in the pandemic, right? We're all very connected. The computers and the fact that we were all stuck in our houses for 2 years made that very easy for us to see. And now that we're transitioning back into in-person activities, that value behind meeting and connecting with other people is still very important, and learning about other cultures and viewpoints, okay? You get to experience personal growth and development. I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to go abroad or go even not abroad, but away from your families for a couple of weeks. It's a big deal, right? In a wonderful way, you get to see what it's like to be, you know, independent, kind of responsible for yourself, making sure you are, you know, on top of your things, like we say in English, your classes and your schedule. So it's a great opportunity to kind of grow, okay? It's a great opportunity if you're going, for example, to the States to be in total English immersion, all right? I'm not sure if any of you are currently taking English classes, but I am learning Spanish, and I actually live right now in Costa Rica. When I took classes in the United States, it's totally different than living in a country where I have to speak Spanish all the time. You learn a lot faster when you have to do it. Okay, you meet people from all over the world who are different from you, which is amazing. And it gives you the chance to see how you adapt to new situations, because maybe someday, either when you go to school or when you get a job, you might have to be in a different place, and it kind of gives you a chance to try that. Okay, let's take a look at the next slide. So now there's also, as I mentioned, virtual options, right? And I know some of us are kind of tired of virtual, but the reality of it is sometimes virtual is an awesome option. So first of all, it's flexible, right? I'm giving you this talk from my bedroom, and you guys might be in your bedrooms or in your kitchens or in your dining rooms or at your school library, but it's a nice flexible way to learn. It helps you to develop a lot of soft skills. Soft skills are those skills that aren't something you can just study in a book, right? Things like critical thinking and problem solving and communicating and creativity. When you're virtual, all you have is your ability to kind of share your ideas. And so you get to do a lot of communication and a lot of creative and critical thinking with your classmates. Okay, again, you get to practice self-motivation, because now there's no person, you know, knocking on your door every morning to make sure you're awake and going to class. This is on your own. And so you need to make sure that, you know, you're motivated to connect to class. And when I say on your own, I don't mean in the class, but I mean like kind of getting yourself started and connecting into the group. You get a great chance to get exposed to people all over the world, but just in a virtual setting. our class in particular that I'm going to talk to you about, Education USA Academy, is a very interactive class. So it's not sitting there for 2 hours, maybe like some of your high school classes during the pandemic where you just had to listen. It's a very dynamic experience. And so it can be really actually a lot of fun. And it's obviously less expensive because you're doing it from home rather than traveling to another country. So let's take a look at what's next. All right, so I'm curious if you have a chance while we're talking to tell me how you feel about virtual learning versus in-person learning. I'm going to go ahead and continue, but feel free to throw in the chat how you feel about learning in person versus virtually. And we'll continue talking and I'll look at your answers as we go. So I want to talk to you now about Education USA Academy and Education USA Academy Connects. Those are the two programs that I mentioned earlier. These are the high school study abroad programs I want to talk to you about. So let's move on and see what those look like. So before we start though, I do want to tell you where we are because I'm going to tell you about a program at UW-Madison and I want to make sure you know where we're located. So this map gives you an idea of where Wisconsin is. Wisconsin's located in the center northern part of the country. We're in an area called the Midwest. And as you can see on the smaller map, we're about 2 hours from Chicago. So if you've heard of Chicago, we're straight north, about 2 hours. All right, let's move on. So the University of Wisconsin-Madison is a school that's a public research institution. So what I mean by that is that we are a public school that is very much focused on research. So we have 45,000 students, of which about 4,000 are international students from about 130 countries. So we are a very, very diverse campus. We have very much, as I mentioned, a research focus, and we've been around for a very long time, since 1848. Next slide, please. So let's now look, now that you have a little background on UW-Madison and where Wisconsin and Madison is, let's move on and talk about Education USA Academy. So in the next slide, you'll see that we'll first look at Education USA Academy, which is the in-person program. So Education USA Academy is, as I mentioned, in person. And for UW-Madison, our program runs this upcoming summer from July 1st to July 22nd. So it's about a 3-week program. And the cost of the program is $4,900. Now, what does that include? So that includes basically everything beside once you arrive to Chicago, right? So you have to deal with your visa costs and you have to deal with your airline tickets. But when you arrive to Chicago, we pick you up and all of your housing, your food, your insurance, your classes, your activities, everything is included. Okay, and then we drop you back off at the airport and you head home. Now, the theme this year, in addition to being a college prep course, which means that it's meant for international students to learn about higher education in the United States, but it does also have an academic theme. And the theme is very, very interactive. You'll do workshops, you'll go to presentations, you'll meet and work together on projects. And the topic is under innovating solutions for a sustainable future. So basically focusing on issues of environmentalism and sustainability, which no matter what you want to do in life, we all have to care about the environment, right? So it's very relevant, even if you aren't necessarily a science major. And then it's also focusing on entrepreneurism, which I saw earlier, as we mentioned, somebody's interested in starting a business. So entrepreneurship is the opportunity, right, to start a business. And this will focus on combining those two ideas. And no matter what your interest is in your future, everything always comes down to business, right? Projects need funding. People need to buy things. People need to donate money to things. And so there's always kind of that money and business component. So that's why this topic is really great, no matter what your field of interest is. Okay, now what does this program look like? In 3 weeks, what do you do? So you are participating, as I mentioned, in interactive workshops and presentations with students, with faculty members, with different organizations in the community. You get to do volunteering, okay? So you'll get to go out into the community and volunteer at different places. You'll, on the weekends, be doing more field trips and different excursions. And then you'll also be having that college prep component, which means that you'll meet with advisors from admissions, career counselors, financial aid, and they'll talk to you and answer your questions that you have about applying to someplace in the United States. And the last thing that's really useful to know is that you also visit 2 other schools. So you don't just go to UW-Madison. You also visit a private school and you also visit a community college. So you get the chance to see different options and learn about their admissions process in case you're interested in a different school. Next slide, please. All right, so now let's talk about Academy Connects. So Connects is our virtual program. As you can see from this picture, it's a super diverse program. The ones we ran this past summer had students from Turkey and Costa Rica and Mexico and Peru and all these different places in the Caribbean. So they're very diverse programs. Okay, let's take a look at the details on the next slide. So the Academy Connects program is a virtual program and it has a little bit of a different theme. So this year's theme is STEAM exploration and skills for college success. So what does that mean? It means that you're going to talk to and interact with faculty and researchers and students who are doing work in STEAM fields, which are science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And then you'll also get to have the part about college prep. And so you'll also meet with admissions, financial aid, and career counselors and get to do virtual tours of other schools. So there's a great opportunity for you to interact and talk about these topics just in a virtual setting. The cost, as you can see, is $490, and the course runs for 4 weeks, meeting twice a week, 2 hours each time, so a total of 16 hours. As you can see, this program is offered many times over the course of the year. We have one actually coming up in January. Registration is open now, and that occurs in the morning from 8 to 10 a.m. on Mondays and Wednesdays. And then all of the programs are actually on Monday and Wednesday, but the times vary. So you can see we have some in July and in August, some in the morning and some in the afternoon. So let's take a look at the next slide. Now, this program I already mentioned is very interactive, and you'll get the chance to have all of those career and college preparatory components while also interacting with students and doing virtual tours. So it's a really great option if you know the in-person is not an option for you for a variety of reasons. I really encourage you to consider a virtual option because I think it's a very useful and very engaging program. Let's take a look at the next slide. So as we're kind of wrapping up, what I hope to do, you guys, is share with you a little bit about the value of high school study abroad and why it's important. Because in the United States, we don't just look at your test scores or your grades. We want to see you as a whole person. And something like a college or a high school study abroad program is a great way to show that you're different, that you're willing to try risks, that you're willing to do different things to give you the opportunity to learn about other people and other cultures and connect with the world around you. So I want you to walk away from this thinking about how high school study abroad is a way to, and I have a whole list of things for you. Let's take a look at the next slide. First of all, explore if a school is a good fit for you. So Daniel mentioned this earlier, that schools shouldn't be, your school search shouldn't involve picking the school you've heard about the most, because I can tell you, I know what they are. They're Ivy League schools or ones that you always hear about in the movies, right? Or the ones that are the highest ranked. You want to find a school that's good for you, the size, the programs, the students. And so coming to a study abroad gives you the chance to look for a good fit. Let's take a look at the next item. Okay, it gives you the chance to learn about new majors and opportunities. So you'll get to be on campus and learn about these different opportunities that exist for students. Let's take a look at the next slide. You'll get a chance to speak directly with people in admissions and financial aid to learn about things like, how do I pay for college as an international student? Are there scholarships available? How do I get in? What do I have to fill out? Okay, so they'll be able to answer those kinds of questions for you. What else? Let's take a look at the next one. You'll get the chance to have a global experience that sets you apart from other students on a college application. So you'll get the chance to, again, have something to mention in that application that shows that you are different than maybe all of those other students with great grades and great test scores that are also applying. Let's move on. So I want to end by asking you this question. Daniel's given you a lot of information. I've provided you with, I hope, valuable information. So now it's up to you. What do you think is going to be your next step in looking into opportunities for school and study in the United States? So thank you very much for the presentation. The next slide has some information about contacts. And the website for our program is here. You're also welcome to reach out. I can throw my email in the chat if you have specific questions about UW-Madison. And I know that now we're both available and more than happy to answer questions you have.
Oops, forgot to unmute myself. That's right. Thank you very, very much, Sarah. Let's begin with our Q&A session. Sarah has put her email in the chat box if you want to copy it. If anybody has a question for either me or Sarah, go ahead and put it in the chat box, and I will be answering we will be answering your questions. I see somebody wrote, I hope I'll be finishing. All right, so these are answers, I think, to the previous questions. I am Maria Rosales. I want to learn the English language to collaborate in the area of human rights. All right, that was also from the previous. I want to study at the University in the United States, but I don't know if I can take someone with me. All right, Damaris. If your question is if you can take someone with you, not that I know of. Usually that's when you are studying a graduate degree and you are married and have children. Those people you can take. You cannot take anybody else with your visa. They can go if they have their own travel visa or study visa or whatever, but it will be totally separate from yourself. So yes, when you study, if you're going to study an undergraduate for an undergraduate degree, then it's your own visa and you have to go by yourself. Any other questions about Education USA, studying in the States, about programs, short programs, summer programs? Anybody else?
And I do actually, while we're waiting, I see Fernando had something that maybe looks like a question. So just to answer this, you said you'd like to study in the US, but you don't know if it's a requirement to have a specific age for a degree. And I believe the answer is no. I know that, for example, the programs that we presented today, like Education USA, their Academy and Connects, there are some age requirements, and it's mainly that you have to be a high school student. We know that in different countries, sometimes people finish earlier or later, but to actually enter and go earn a degree, there's not an age requirement.
Exactly. For bachelor's, for master's, for a doctorate, you do not have to have a specific age or an age range. What you do have to have is the previous studies. So if you're going to do a bachelor's degree, you have to have studied high school. If you're going to do master's, you're going to have studied your bachelor's. And for doctorates, some, if I remember correctly, some or most don't require a master's, but you can either jump directly to the doctorate degree. Yeah, so those are the requirements, but no age requirements for that. And okay, well, it seems nobody else has any questions. So if
there is, sorry, one more question popped up. Says, is it, I think there's a little leg. So is it necessary to validate my studies done in Mexico in the United States? So yes, and it kind of depends on what you're talking about. Like if you are an undergraduate student and you want to transfer, right, halfway through your studies, yes, there would be a need for you to what we would call like transfer your credits. And that would involve, admissions offices have kind of requirements and processes for taking what you already have completed in Mexico and evaluating it to see, if it meets the requirements of your school in the United States, or maybe some of the classes you took won't transfer, some of them might, but that's really kind of on we say in English, a case-by-case basis, right? Each student has a different situation, and the admissions advisors could help you to determine that. Do we support obtaining a visa? I don't know, maybe if you want to go first, Daniel, with that, and then I can provide very little information about that.
Sure. All right. So we can orient you here at Education USA. We can orient you on the basics on obtaining a visa. We do have 1 or 2 sessions a year where we invite an officer from the consulate, where they give information about visas, and you can talk to them and ask them specific questions that usually pop up in every case. We do not give specific information on visas, and we do not assist in the visa process. Everything related to visas, you should see directly with the consulate or embassy.
And I think just to second what Daniel said, we at the university don't support, in I think the sense you might be thinking, if you are admitted, for example, to your undergraduate program, then the university, of course, provides, the documents necessary for you to request the student visa that you would need. But as far as kind of helping you along the process, there's nothing beyond that. And I think something that's important to know is that for the programs I mentioned today, which are the High School Study Abroad, Education USA Academy, those actually require a tourist visa. So those are not student visa programs because they're not degree or credit bearing programs. So I think it's just important to know that there is a difference between like a visa you'll need for undergraduate study or graduate study and the visa that you would need for these high school programs.
Exactly. And the reason we refer you to the consulate is also because they're the only ones, consulate and the embassy, they're the only ones that have updated information on visas. They do not supply any of us with immediately with current information, and they're the only ones who can answer specific questions. So if you, I mean, you can still ask us, and we'll probably end up telling you, giving you a tip or whatever where to ask, but usually it should be with the consulate or embassy. We have another question here. There are programs that allow you to do internships outside the university. Are there programs that allow you to do internships outside the university?
Mhm.
Yes, there are. The internship programs outside the university. So those would be the OPT or CPT programs. They're optional practical training or curricular practical training, which would be the curricular practical training. Yes, you do have an option to do 12 months of internship with your student visa, but that's for a bachelor's degree or for your graduate degree. Sarah, I don't know if you want to add something to that.
Yeah, so I just actually threw something in the chat from our International Student Services. And this is just a link, the second link that I put actually, just talks about how employers can or cannot hire students. So speaking specifically about like work that you would receive compensation for, that would give you, it's from an employer perspective, but that would let you kind of see what programs are kind of available or what kinds of visas lend themselves to work. And then it could be that your individual program might have more information if you're not necessarily interested in pay, but just interested in some sort of like learning experience, or an internship we call an unpaid internship. Then that might be more of an opportunity that you would have to kind of talk to each individual program about. So that's like kind of the recommendation I can give there. And if you're looking for work opportunities just to like earn money that aren't necessarily internships, like on campus, there are sometimes opportunities as well. Lots of student jobs that, again, admissions as an international student would be able to give you more information about that. And I'll throw the link for the undergraduate admissions, and they would be a good resource. I also threw in the chat here, you guys, the link for our admissions website for specifically international students. And somebody had asked about the English requirements. And this link tells you exactly what tests are accepted and what your level needs to be. And if for some reason your level isn't where it needs to be, UW-Madison does have an English as a second language department that you could potentially take courses, like get accepted, take courses in, and then once you reach the appropriate level, directly transfer into your normal studies. But all those kind of language requirements are here on this first link.
Yep. So that would be the answer also for Maria Rosales. Your question about the English proficiency, that would be the first link that Sarah shared with.
Yep. And
Um,
here, a very similar link is just that admissions link, which, here would be a good place to find contact information about if you're interested in just working like during your time as maybe an undergraduate student, just more for income and less about necessarily experience. You could start there and they would be able to direct you to the right people.
Okay, so if there aren't any other questions, let me just refer to you to our contact information. So if you have any other questions or you want to follow up on any of the questions you asked here, you can write to me at monterrey@educationusa.org. Please make sure to follow us on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where we're constantly uploading all sorts of information, opportunities on scholarships, on special programs such as these, and a lot of information that is useful for your admissions process. And the last link we have right there, bit.ly, is our link to our resource pages. So you'll find a lot of digital resources on the whole process, on studying for your exams, on financial aid, on how to write essays, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if you need any advising, go ahead and write to me to that email, and I'll respond as quick as I can, and we'll get you started with your advising process. So that seems we don't have any other questions. So I'll close up by thanking you again, Sarah. Great presentation. A whole bunch of opportunities for everybody. Thank you everybody else as well for coming. Well, that's it for me, Sarah.
Yeah, no, thank you guys again. I appreciate being allowed to be here and present to you. I threw the link to the programs we talked about in the chat as well. And feel free to reach out with any questions you have about the university or majors we offer, or any of the programs that we talked about tonight. So I hope you guys have a great night. Thank you so much.
Good night, everybody. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.